So let's get started. As people will roll in, I have a little dial gadget that shows me how many people are watching, but we'll also be recording this and sharing it. So, welcome everyone to the first Agami Hangout-on-Air. We're touching on a topic today that probably merits many discussions. It cannot be covered in 1 hour. And however fantastic this group is, they cannot represent all possible aspects of it. So we're mindful of that, and we're hoping that we can do a couple more editions of this in the next few weeks. But what a good start, because we have an absolutely wonderful group here today. Let me just do some brief introductions, and then we'll dive right in to the meat of it. So just a quick personal introduction. My name is Sachin, Malhan, and I'm one of the co-organizers. I lead HumLab, which is one of the co-organizers of the Agami Prize. And before this, I've been, an entrepreneur in the legal industry in the impact sector for many, many years. Um, I think the one initiative that links me the most with lawyers and young lawyers is, of course, Law School Tutorials, LST. But I am super excited by what we're doing now on legal innovation and entrepreneurship, because I think it's a good time to do something where in an area where change is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. So we've got this great group of people together, and we really want to dive into their insights on what's going to happen and what is already happening. So I'll just give you a brief introduction so that each person doesn't have to do that for themselves. Let me start off. Let me go right to left. We have Rahul Matthan. Rahul is one of the founding partners and senior-most partners of Trilegal, which is widely recognized as one of India's top law firms. Just recently, there was the Bahura ranking, which for Trilegal is also one of the best law firms to work at, which is super important for all of us because we want to be in a place where we can have a blast. So Rahul is also a well-known commentator on the issue of law and technology, and I'm sure folks have come across his Mint column on more than one occasion. So welcome, Rahul.
Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Great. Continuing to move right to left, we have Priyanka. Priyanka is the CEO of Manupatra. Priyanka and I go back a long, long time when Manupatra was sort of kicking off, and we were also sort of kicking off with our entrepreneurial work. And so it's really great to just to see the journey of Manupatra these last couple of decades, and also to know how deeply Priyanka has seen also the evolution of technology, publishing, legal information. So just having your perspective here is also fantastic. Welcome, Priyanka.
Thank you, Sachin.
Indranil, so good. Again, old relationships, old connections. Indranil is one of the first, sort of legal entrepreneurs. I would say, right there, the three of, the first five legal entrepreneurs to really start to look at how technology and data and information can transform how we operate in this legal regulatory environment. And it's really good to have him because Lexplosion is one of the few that have managed to sort of get to that point of stability where they have concrete products and they're out there, sort of leading these segments. And Indranil also comes from a corporate legal background, beginning his career with GE. Am I right, Indranil?
I did a stint with Amarchand and then moved to
Oh,
GE.
wonderful. Okay, great. So you dipped your hands in all the pots. Huh? Okay, good. So wonderful to have you because you can see the entrepreneurial trajectory of going from an early stage to a mature sort of organization. And we have very, very importantly, an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur trying to build something in a rapidly changing environment. So Bhaven is the co-founder and CEO of Resolve 360, and they're doing remarkable work around mediation and how do you bring mediation to, sort of take a platform approach towards mediation, bring it to environments where normal recourse is disputes, and not just looking at mediation from a point of view of what happens when you have a dispute and then using mediation, but also looking at how do you prevent it. And I think they're thinking deep and they're thinking, from the point of view of platforms. And so it's really great because also you're at an early stage, relatively early stage in your growth trajectory. So that brings a new perspective terms of what are the challenges.
Thank you,
So,
Sachin.
yeah, thank you for being here. So let me get started. The way we'd like to do this is to really bring questions across, like put questions to you, and each of these questions is unique to what you bring to the table. But at some point in time, I would like to tease out and make sure that we can pull up the full audience questions out also into the room, and go from there. So just a word of advice, one essential piece of information to everyone here and everyone watching. Please, you can ask your questions directly on the in the chat section that is there for the public broadcast. So make sure you can put your questions there. You can also tweet your questions using to Agami Prize using the hashtag Agami Prize. So let me just repeat that. Ideally, so you can put your questions in two ways. You can either put your questions in the chat of the Hangout, which is currently live, or you can just tweet your question using the hashtag uh, hash Agami Prize, AGAMIPRIZE, which is also the title of this Hangout. So Agami, basically, there. And I will pluck some of these questions to bring to this panel towards the end. We have left a fair bit of time to do that. So I'm hoping that we get enough time for some of the really meaningful questions from the audience. So that's the way we're going to do it. A few questions from me that I've been sort of dying to ask, and a few questions from the audience as we get started. Right? And the intent here is that we want to bring these different perspectives because each of these people comes at it in a connected way, but from a different segment of the industry, related, but definitely unique perspective. So let's start off. I have a question. I'm going to start off with a question for Rahul. Rahul, as someone who is not just spearheading one of the biggest law firms, but also as someone who's an active commentator on in the sphere of law, technology, data, what are you seeing as some of the biggest opportunities for law firms themselves?
So, first of all, thank you for hosting this. I think this is a great initiative. And on this panel, you included Sachin. I feel like the dinosaur because I am I represent that part of this whole ecosystem that has changed the least and innovated the least. So, in answer to your question, I think it's all to play because law firms today, no matter how innovative they say they are woefully behind the curve as far as innovation, as far as they should be innovating. And as an industry, I think we prefer to remain within our cozy little sphere of comfort. Don't really look to innovate that much. So you may hear law firms that are bringing AI into their business and things like that, but when you look at how it actually plays out, I don't know how much innovation there is. Mostly their products are built on US data sets, so I don't know how accurate they are in the context of Indian documents. I certainly tried a lot of them, and I haven't found them terribly useful. And just in our business practices, we still tend to be very old school and old fashioned. If there's any innovation that's happening, that innovation is happening because our clients are driving us to innovate. So we're starting to see some sort of innovation in fees and payment structures. We're starting to see maybe some innovative products that some law firms are coming up with. A lot of our innovation tends to be around knowledge dissemination. But really, if you think about it, and including all the people who are on this hangout, that's really low down in the pecking order in terms of the sorts of innovations that people should be doing. So it's all to play. And if I was to talk about the sorts of things that I would like to see done, it's even in very simple business processes that law firms run. We don't really need to all the way to bringing AI and global contracts and things like that into the workplace. We should look to find better ways streamline collaboration within law firms. And I think the only other point that I would make before I hand it over to someone else is that there is this tendency to try and apply tech products to the legal space, like as if it will work just as it works in every other space. And that's really not true. And one example that we've tried and we're currently grappling is in the whole customer relationship management sphere. And so if you are sold as a law firm, or if you're selling to a law firm a CRM suite, don't assume that law firms work the same way as software companies. We don't really have a sales funnel. So it's no point selling me a product that describes this ideal sales funnel of lead, then prospect, and then prospect gets converted into client. That's not the way law firms work. Instead, what law firms work on is relationships, and what we need is a smart way to mine those relationships that work for law firms. And the way these relationships are mined is it's not going to convert immediately. I mean, there are conversions that I get 6-10 years after I actually met the guy for the first time, and these are the really powerful conversions, because if we've actually mined that relationship well over a long period of time, they yield really powerful client connections. And if we can use technology to address these sorts of problems in the way that law firms need them addressed, I think that's when we'll see good, strong innovation.
Yeah, and I think that this is, Rahul, this has taken me a while to see, but also law firms tend to be at some level, seen as at the frontier of legal industry, because they are the most prominent sort of, they are servicing these clients, these high-profile deals. But at some level, a lot of the innovation that is happening in enterprise legal. It's happening inside in the way the regulatory and legal processes happen inside big organizations. So what's been interesting to me is to see what is possible with law firms and what can happen there, because they are also unique organizations. Themselves, they are unique. They service a certain type of customer. They do it in a certain way. And it's taken me some time to see that actually there are some of the really big opportunities with AI and data are not so much inside law firms right now, but probably inside enterprise legal. I don't know if that's a controversial statement, but I want a quick response from you on that. What would you say?
Look, I don't. That seems to suggest that AI is not useful or innovation is not useful in law firms, and I would defer with you on that. In that, I think it is really important, but it's important to get it right.
Yeah.
And I think there are two reasons why your statement is correct. One is that lawyers, as a species, I think we are resistant to change. We would much prefer to keep things the way they have always been. Essentially, I guess, common law system, we learn precedent, and we are slaves to precedent. So whenever I try to come up with some new innovation, I need to explain first why we can't keep doing the things we have always done. This is not the way enterprise works, right? So enterprise is constantly looking to change things and to make things better. Law firms are constantly looking to explain why things can't be the way they've always been. And there was a managing partners conference that I was at some time back, and one of the managing partners stood up on stage and said, as law firms, as managing partners of law firms, we should not be afraid to break something that's not yet broken. And most of us are. We will just look at it and say, look, it's slightly chipped. Let's put Fevicol and fix it. When actually we need to smash it and build a new thing from scratch. This is what all the other industries are doing. I mean, it's called creative destruction. And this industry needs some creative destruction.
That's great. Thank you, Rahul. That was, as I move to the other panelists, please feel free to pick up any of these threads that you feel relate to where you are as well. Let me bring a question, just because we touched on enterprise legal or enterprise regulatory as well. I want to just come to Indranil. Indranil, what are you seeing as, of course, you're doing so much work in compliance, but I'd encourage you to look beyond that. But what are you seeing as some of the biggest opportunities in enterprise?
See, I think what we need to all realize is that the biggest challenge that, say, in-house legal teams, which represent various kinds of corporate enterprises face is a shortage of talent and shortage of people. So they are grappling with transactions on one hand. They have various kinds of really low end to extremely complex contracts to handle on the other. The organizations which are more public focused have hundreds of litigations of all sorts to deal with. In many cases, they're not even sure whether there are litigations that are being filed against them. For example, banks and insurance companies have so many ex parte orders that are issued against them because they don't even know that cases are being filed against them in different courts across the country. And of course, then there is this whole aspect of compliance. Now, when we were in-house, so for example, in GE, when we used to recruit a new lawyer into the team and said that, you will be a part of the compliance team, their faces fell, their shoulders drooped, because they all, fancy being in the transactions team, traveling to all these fantastic locations, working with top law firms. None of them really thought of compliance as the career option that they'd taken, that they'd like to take after a longish 5-year, at least, law program in one of the top law schools. Now, inevitably, the outcome of that was that compliance ended up being ignored. Now, if you have a team, and even if you see the largest of Indian organizations, there are very few companies which have more than 100 lawyers. Most, including some of the $2 to $5 billion revenue companies, have teams of 10 to 15, at the most 20 lawyers. So it's a problem of having a scarce set of resources and being able to utilize them. So where technology can really help is in being able to streamline their lives to a point where a lot of this information, which they're otherwise, seeking around, desperately looking for at the last minute, just comes to them in a structured manner, so that they don't really have to worry about missing things, which is one of the biggest challenges that most large enterprises face. If there is a change in law, they don't want to be informed about it after it has come into force and after the first of the notices have arrived at somebody's desk. They want to know about it well in advance when the things are being planned. So, for example, an organization like us, which focuses on compliance as one of our key technology products, has already started talking about the implications of the data protection bill on these different companies. So it's one aspect of the data protection bill is, of course, civil rights, privacy, constitution. But there is a larger space for all these different companies, from manufacturing companies to e-commerce companies, who will have to bring in significant changes in their processes, policies, the entire workflow, to be able to successfully bring in the changes that data protection bill, if the current format is what is eventually adopted, has to bring in. So our responsibility then becomes in being able to streamline this information through technologies where they can start planning in advance. So I think the biggest challenge that enterprises face is that most of their problems are so historical that most in-house teams have just learned to live with them, and they don't believe that they can either be solved or need to be solved. So, for example, when we first started our compliance product, for the longest time, the biggest challenge we faced was to even explain the need. Why do we need a compliance solution? We seem to know everything anyway. Till we started having conversations and pointed out things that they really did not know and how a solution would help. So the discussion today, for example, say 10 odd years after we started our first compliance product, is a lot more mature. So now there's a discussion around, hey, can you tell me, by analyzing the different things that other members of the same industry are doing, give me some insights on what are the compliances to focus on? Can you help me analyze my risks better? Can you score my risks better? Can I be sure that the top management, the CXO level, is only focusing on the 50 critical compliances? How do we manage, how do we evaluate critical compliance? And that's where, for example, big data, analytics, AI can all play a role, because that's when we are now thinking of how can we then analyze the information that is coming in to say that in your industry, these are the compliances that are typically being focused on, and companies which are not focusing on them are facing these kinds of potential penalties. That's where the conversation is going now, from just a pure vanilla information tool where people just got triggers saying, you need to do this on the 15th of the month. If you don't do it, this is the penalty. And if they don't do it, then there is a reminder, and so on and so forth. We are now getting into analyzing the consequences, analyzing risk, analyzing industry, and trying to put all of that together and provide a more rational input to the in-house teams on where they need to go with this. And it's not just, of course, compliance and the issues that I talked about, contracts. And we are talking about, companies with thousands of contracts, trying to analyze the risk of, any of these contracts, for example, expiring without them not knowing about it, and what kind of information they know in advance. And one of the things that Rahul briefly mentioned, and I think the problem that, for example, plain vanilla CRM tools face when they go to a law firm is the legal industry, whether it's the in-house legal teams, whether it is the law firms, have a completely different dynamic to it, which a lot of us who have come from, say, to deviate for a moment, but relevant nonetheless, is, for example, financial outsourcing has been a huge success. IT outsourcing has been a huge success. When I talk about outsourcing, I mean BPO, KPO, ITOs have been huge successes, but LPOs have been a massive failure. And the reason, or barring maybe 5 odd companies, has been largely a failure. And the reason is, there is a completely different dynamic which comes when it comes to outsourcing of law. The trust factor, the knowledge of local laws, the identification of issues is so differently handled that LPOs, which were at one time seen to be a $5 billion industry, is probably not even reached 500 million today. And people who therefore innovate with law ideally should, I'm not saying they have to be lawyers, but they should have the fundamental understanding of how the industry works, how an in-house legal team works, how a law firm works, before they innovate in that area, because then I think they'll be building products and solutions which will be more relevant to this industry. So more analytics, more risk-based inputs is what I think large enterprises are looking for today.
Thanks, Indranil. I think there's a message there around how do you do the whole deep engagement with industry? How do you build awareness? How do you build understanding? How do you take people on that journey? Because not everybody may be not enough momentum inside. And I think that's something similar when I had my one-on-one conversation with Bhaven. I remember that conversation as well. It's how do you do a whole lot of that awareness building, the painful front-end awareness building. So we'll come back to that. I think this team is going to come back. Because if you're at the front end of the change, then some of the pain you have to carry yourself. Priyanka, legal knowledge and research. What are the big opportunities you're seeing there?
You know what? Something which is very basically different from what Rahul was talking about, because in a law firm you're also dealing with people. I mean, Indranil would possibly agree, because they are also dealing with a lot of data. What is different with us is that because we're dealing with data, we're dealing with content, so we can apply technology. In a law firm scenario, you can't just use a plug and play. You can't just say there is this X product and, you can kind of go and put it in 5 different firms. 5 different firms will need to be customized in 5 different ways. So answering your specific, Sachin, in terms of opportunities, when you're leveraging technology in our space, the opportunities are limitless. If I would just to give you a perspective, 2001 when we launched, coincidentally, 16th August, Manupatra completes 17 years in the market. When we launched, we were a pure vanilla database with a Boolean search and a field search. And look at to where we are today. We are at natural language, we are using analytics, we have visualization tools. So we have over these 18 years, because 18 years back is when we started, we have actually leveraged technology every single day. And our objective is to reduce the research time for the end user. Our objective is to be able that the end user gets more relevant searches, relevant results. So for us, the opportunities are limitless. Artificial intelligence, it's the buzzword today. It's really not being utilized in the actual sense of the term in India, but everyone has started to kind of utilize it in small and big ways. And I think next decade, we're going to possibly see so many innovations which will be using AI. And in terms of end user, technology is definitely going to be, it's something which we can kind of apply as of tomorrow. You think of something, you develop, you test it out, and you can apply. And the benefit is that just in case it doesn't doesn't work out, you can always come back, tweak it, and then reapply it again. If we look at the specifics in the legal knowledge space, right? Legal knowledge, again, is a huge space. I mean, Indranil just said that, there is a paucity of resources, of qualified or good quality resources. Obviously, India is, with our population, I think what we need is, and I'm also talking about this based on our experience, because we go down to the district level to train the judicial officers and the students in the law colleges. And over the last 8 or 10 years, that one could always see that there is such a huge gap in the quality of education, the knowledge, which is not there with them. And in fact, that is something which made us launch our latest initiative, lawskills.in, which is an e-learning platform. And there our objective very clearly is to put across affordable and practical information on small capsules, on small topics. And these are multilingual, because you want a guy who is speaking Telugu or Tamil or Bengali or whatever their mother tongue is to understand. And after that, if they want to move over to English, there's always an opportunity for them. But the population which needs to be coached and to be trained is so huge that one player cannot do it. There is so much of opportunity there for so many players, and because we cannot simply say that we use traditional modes to do it. We have to understand how the generation thinks. We have to understand that with every district, how does the population there is, how are they able to receive the information? So each of them again needs to be customized. Whether it is whether it is taking into account the attention span or the retention. So it'll have to be customized, whether it's bite-sized or, whether it's a hybrid model, whether it's a face-to-face model. So in terms of legal knowledge, immense opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just pick up one thing that you mentioned? You said, so you were speaking about like how you've been able to bring in technology into the way you operate and make it better and better. But are you seeing innovations out there that are approaching things in a totally different way in terms of legal research, not just like building on the conventional ways, but like just approaching legal research in a totally different way? Are you seeing something that
Absolutely.
up at night a little bit?
Okay, so internationally, you can see a whole lot of these projects. Projects which are taking off. A couple of them are already out there in the market. So if even our bases do not reinvent. We also go and see that what is it that our end users, the lawyers, what is it that they will be using. So, for example, the analytics piece that we have. At the end of the day, what we are doing is it is the data which is being interpreted. It's just that we try to get into the shoes of the end user and then try and put it in the same perspective and give it a user interface in which they will understand it. So similarly, answering your questions, if you ask me names, Ravel Law did something. Then you had, there's this company in the UK, which is doing some fantastic stuff that they're trying to do in legal innovation side using technology. But all of this is again related to content, information, data, which they are interpreting in various ways. Visualization is something which is really taking on now. So, and it's true. A picture speaks 1,000 words. That is something very, very true. Because when you look at it, you look at a visual thing, and then automatically your mind kind of starts to decipher what's happening, and then you just go down to the text just to see that what you thought was right.
Yeah, this is not a question but a comment, but I think that also when you are in a 20-year organization as in Manupatra, then you're committed from the point of view of wanting to innovate, but also being an incumbent and wanting to make sure that you can respond quickly to what's happening. So
yes,
it's going to be really fascinating to see how that impacts you. Let me move on and put my question to Bhaven. Thank you, Priyanka, for that really insightful analysis. Bhaven, you're in an area that is at the very soul of sort of a democracy, which is dispute resolution, and it is of course linked to so many different things, and there's no way that you can speak on the entire thing. But I think that when I spoke to you earlier, there were so many things that came to me so many insights that came to me. What do you think? Just as a relatively sort of definitely post-proof of concept, but early stage entrepreneur, looking at the dispute resolution space, what are the big opportunities in your space?
Thank you, Sachin. I think first, let me thank you for giving this opportunity for me to speak. And I think I must applaud what you're doing with Agami Prize and HumLab. I think creating this sort of an ecosystem is the first step towards, in the right direction. Professionally and personally, I would say that I had to go through this entire, the formal dispute resolution mechanism that is currently incumbent in India. And I would say I'm both fortunate and unfortunate. Unfortunate because, of course, I can understand the pain and agony that a litigant or a person seeking resolution to a dispute is having to face. Fortunate because it transitioned me from being cynical to being critical. And using that criticism, of course, we all whine about what happens, but using that criticism to be able to even make a dent, make a small change. And that is how, sort of Preserve 360 was born. We want to migrate and use technology to not only prevent disputes from spiraling into litigations, but also, create a trust-based environment and, work on collaborative progress. Coming to your question, so I think it is very important for us to understand that dispute resolution is not only about law. We typically, whenever it comes to disputes, our first thought is courts, our first thoughts are lawyers. I think until that mindset changes, once we do understand that there is scope for people even beyond the legal industry, there is a scope for innovation and a perspective from that, I think it's the horizon. So when it comes to opportunities, I feel that we can broadly categorize them into three categories. One being innovation inside the court, one is innovation outside the court, and one is where innovation comes even before we think of the word court. So I think it is a breeding ground for innovation. Legal industry today is detached from technology and innovation. And when I say technology, I would say, like Rahul correctly said, you cannot just build something and then try and apply it somewhere just because you've built something. You need to understand that it is not the technology, but the know-how. It's about how you're applying that technology to sort of cater to what challenges that we are facing. We also must look at not only court trials, not only legal issues, but also media trials today. With social media, with the power of blowing anything out of proportion in everybody's hands, we need to understand that there needs to be a civilized platform for everybody to resolve their dispute. And one other important thing that I would like to point out would be coming up with creative dispute resolution solutions. It may involve technology, it may not involve technology. I would like to give a quick example of, there was a family dispute in which two brothers did not speak to each other for around 30 years. The resolution for that was nothing to do with law. It was nothing to do with technology. It was pure human psychology. They put a photograph, their family photograph, a photograph of their father, a photograph of the God they believed in, and over a cup of coffee, I think they could resolve the entire disputes. It was because they wanted to preserve the family name. So sometimes these sort of creative dispute solutions, resolution solutions have to come from professionals, but also from people who are not necessarily from the legal industry, so that it brings a fresher perspective. And one other important thing is, right now we see government as somebody who's hostile to technology. I think when we do open and broaden our minds, we realize that the government is not averse. If you really make representations, if you really push it through, they are ready to help you. And we had the opportunity of making a representation to the Ministry of Law and Justice, and they were extremely welcoming. So if we do make up our minds, no matter which area, which segment it is, even though we think that bureaucracy would come or step in the way, but they are a catalyst to change. So we must not sort of close our minds to anything.
What is really interesting is that when you said that the whole case of disputes is actually a huge opportunity for multidisciplinary work. And when you spoke about family disputes, I remember you mentioning earlier to me mental health professionals and the role of mental health professionals. And I thought of the fact that really some of the most creative work in disputes is probably going to be this sort of silo busting, this sort of integrated solutions at different levels. So, and I know that many people are thinking like that. They are recognizing very quickly that mediation brings an opportunity to bring a whole variety of different skill sets to resolve the disputes well before they happen. So I am fascinated because that has broadened my own understanding of like how big is the opportunity insofar as building trust, honoring contracts, and dispute resolution. So I think we're going to come back to these themes. When we try to look at holistic solutions to the biggest issue in the country, which is pendency and the frustration of the average litigant to the courts. Let me, just mindful of time, let me throw a couple more questions out there, and then I have to sift through this body of audience questions that have come up. So, and I just want to make sure that we honor the audience questions even more than the questions I have on the list. So, let me throw a couple of questions. Rahul, coming back to you, given the predicament of the law firms in terms of like what is it that they can apply, what's relevant to their unique practice, and what is relevant also to India, what is the most constructive role that a big law firm can play to lead in this space?
So look, I think just to take off on something that Bhaven said, I think we need to actually work together with entrepreneurs who are looking to innovate in this space. It's not often that lawyers and technologists can converse in the same language, but we've got to try. We've got to build these solutions together because just as much as the technologists can identify processes, and once you identify the processes, then you can apply technology to the processes and make them easier. But equally, the lawyer needs to then sift through whatever the technologist, the software guy says in his jargon, and apply it to the way a law firm works. I think most often these solutions that we get presented with are solutions that have worked maybe in a UK law firm or have worked in a litigation context. To try and apply that to an Indian law firm that does litigation, but only part of the entire suite of things that they do, is not the correct way to do it. It does require customization. It requires some investment, not some, a considerable investment of time by the law firm. And the law firm needs to be willing to invest that time. Sometimes we're just impatient. Sometimes we want these solutions really quickly. I think it will take time. The Agami Prize is a great initiative, but in order to truly make innovation in the sector in India, we need to give it time. I'm not so young that I don't remember a time before Manupatra. And at that time, to take a Manupatra printout to court, you'd be laughed out of court because they'd say, how do I know that you haven't typed this all up yourself and put a Manupatra logo on top of it? It's all different now, and it's taken, I guess, 17 years, maybe sooner, Priyanka, but it's taken a long time for that mindset. And I think in whatever innovation that we do, even as a law firm, it will take time for those innovations to actually grow roots and be significant. I think law firms have got to back themselves, and I think we've got to say, get out of our own way, I guess, for the most part.
Yeah, and you picked on something where you said, how do we make time, considerable time? And one of the things that's come through in the conversations that I've been having is that we need even a serious time to change pathways, to change workflows, to change behaviors associated with those workflows. And this is coming up again and again. And actually, nobody will say this on record, but so many friends who are in law firms say this. They say that they're told to do this, but we aren't given the space to actually get over our earlier ways and actually do that. So one of the biggest challenges that is happening is helping people develop capacity to do the things that everyone says we should be doing. So it's a common refrain that's coming through. So
I mean, if you go through all the systems we've put in place in Trilegal, the one system that works really well is our financial management system, our billing system. Because essentially, when we get a new billing system in, we just switch the old one off and we turn the new one on. And billing and finance is so core to everything that we do that you get instant compliance, because partners are like, why haven't you filled your time? Lawyers are like, I have to fill my time, otherwise I get locked out of the system and then I won't get my bonus. And everything sort of cascades, right? When we introduce a contract management system or some sort of system that automates even proofreading of contracts, something really, really simple, what we need is a champion. We need someone to say, look, I've used this and it works brilliantly. I saved this amount of time, or if I hadn't gone to use the software, the partner I was reporting to would have picked up this terrible glaring error in the software. And it's only once you get that kind of evangelism, and that evangelism needs to come from within the organization. It's only then that technology starts getting used. And for law firm management, I think it's a really tricky balance, because you can't use a stick to get people to use technology. You've got to make them believe that it's actually useful to them. That actually is the biggest challenge.
And I'm going to just pick up on the behavior change issues and come to Indranil. Indranil, what are the biggest challenges you faced in going from, we have a good idea, we have a fledgling product, to we have different clients who have long-term relationships with us, we are taken seriously? What have been the biggest challenges you faced? I'm sure there have been many, but if you had to cull out maybe one or two, what would they be?
Okay, I'll take the question to basically see it from the point of view of the challenges that we faced in being able to go to a customer. And there, look, ours was a compliance management solution at a time when most organizations believed in maintaining registers of compliances. So the larger organizations had big fat exercise books which had the register of compliances. So there we went in and said, we have a compliance solution which is on the cloud. Now, our first few clients, like when we first decided to have ComRisk on the cloud, didn't know what cloud was. And then, they were mostly lawyers, and they were either lawyers or company secretaries or people like that. And their simple answer was, that's completely out of the question. Our IT organization will never agree. And some of these organizations that we went to, and I will not take names, were large IT companies. And their IT people actually sat down and explained to us why cloud will not work in their case. And these were the same people who, when they went abroad and spoke to their clients, were desperately trying to sell the concept of cloud. So it was quite amusing at times. But why I mention it is
not surprising. But
not surprising at all. See, nothing surprises me anymore, especially in the Indian environment. But it was very amusing then that here were these people who on one hand were talking about evangelizing the cloud, but on the other hand, when it came to their own organizations, were putting their foot down and saying, no, this solution has to be on our server. And the interesting bit is, we've survived close to 10 years with this product without changing our course, saying that we will stick to cloud. Because if you believe in something, and then if you start, kind of tweaking around with the idea, inevitably the consequences, nothing works. So what we decided is that, okay, we will grow slower, but we'll grow with people who realize that cloud is the only way forward. It's because we were managing a largish database of compliances, and then to go and install an individual unit of the solution in the client server and then upload every change in law to them would be hugely difficult for us. So we decided to stick to it, and we've managed to grow wherever we have gone with this concept of compliance on the cloud. So the challenges were many. Challenges remain. To a point that Rahul mentioned, and initially our biggest effort was in explaining the need for a compliance solution. But then once the need was established, we kind of thought that we had won the battle. And then all we needed to do was understand the client's business, give them the compliances that they need, and keep changing it, keep updating it. But then we realized that many organizations were not using the tool at all because there was no internal change management. 4 senior guys had decided that the the organization should, spend some lakhs and get a compliance solution, thinking it's a great idea, but they've never really gone down the line to people who would actually suddenly be inundated with a bunch of compliances and make the system so transparent. See, previously people could just, when they were called and asked, have you done this, said, yes, we can. But now someone can actually log in and see whether they've done or not. And that's not a good situation to be in if you're a junior officer in an organization. So then over the last, say, 6-7 years, we've changed the tone a little bit and said, listen, Comrisk is not Facebook. Nobody's waiting out there every morning to log in and see how many compliances on their plate and see, I have 250 and you have 50. This is exactly the opposite, actually, where people are saying we don't want so many compliances on our plate, and therefore, unless you explain the value of this and do it over time and phase in the solution, you are going to find tremendous amounts of internal resistance. So we've taken up things like change management with a lot more seriousness. People like me and other colleagues of mine who have been in the system for a long enough period of time now go and spend that initial period of time, A, with the leadership, but B, more importantly, with people down the line who will use the tool, so that there is more adoption. Because otherwise, for many of these organizations, spending a few lakhs on a solution is not such a big deal. And then when the time comes for renewal, the inevitable thing is, nobody's really using it. And then the question is, why aren't they using it? Because it's not easy. It's not fun. Now, it's only with people who have started using it and use the tool for, say, 6 months, is it fun. Same with our contract solution. When you have a contract management solution and you've been historically saving all your contracts on your folder, on your hard drive, to suddenly say, no, upload every contract, upload your obligation trackers, and the tool does a lot. But then you still have to do that first thing of uploading a contract when it's signed. And for a lot of organizations, just to get that change in took time, because people were like, I'm not used to doing that. I need the contract whenever I need it. And fair enough. But if it's there in the system, everybody gets to see it, and people had a problem. So then and like Rahul was saying, lawyers are naturally risk averse. The first thing that a lawyer would say is, if you have it on the cloud, what if the system is hacked and then people start getting to see our contracts? And then you have to say to them, you're sending your emails every day with the signed contracts PDF to it, and those emails are on the cloud, and people can hack it anytime and see whatever they really want to. And that conversation again took time. So the point being that I think it's not just lawyers. Human beings are fundamentally resistant to change. I think the millennials downwards are a lot more interested in change as long as the products are cool. So from making the products workable, which was our primary concern in the first few years, we are now trying to see how can we make the product cool so that people down the line who are probably 21, 22 and have a bunch of other things to do, find the solution interesting enough and can compare it with the Instagrams and Pinterests and stuff like that and say, okay, this is not that bad, while it obviously doesn't do any of what Instagram does, it isn't a problem to use it. So we are having to look at coolness, user experience, things that we didn't really have to worry so much about when we started off a lot more, because the kind of users and their use of technology has changed with time.
I'm going to remember your award-winning slogan here, making compliance cool. If you can do that, then no dearth of awards that you should not win. But just picking up from that, I had a different question for Priyanka, but I want to continue on the theme, because there is a very powerful theme around change management, which is absolutely cutting across different innovation, because you hope you can create your product and the whole mousetrap thing, people will beat the path to your door. But unfortunately, we are in a sector that is even more averse sometimes, because its perception of risk is more heightened. And there's this change management theme that I think is coming through in a big way. Priyanka, just coming to you, you probably face this as well. You're probably going to face more and more of this. Any insights there? Any experiences there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Indranil just said, I mean, it's not only the lawyers. Human beings are resistant to change. And I mean, just to give an example, every time we introduce any feature, whether it is small, big, whatever, we've seen it takes at least minimum of 2 years before people start to warm up to it. So initially when we would do it, and because we did not have this data with us, so we would start to think that are we like completely off? And then slowly when we saw a pattern in it, so now when we release a feature, we sit back, and then we, after a couple of months, we say, okay, now let's go back and see whether people have started to kind of use it. So I think it's most of the things, I think, except for things like Netflix and Amazon Prime, which don't need to be, wherein the concept doesn't need to be sold, but everything seems to be a concept sell. Way back in 2001, when we launched, it was a concept sell. I think for 8-9 years, we were selling the concept, so while the big Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, Calcutta, slowly they kind of understood, smaller towns and cities, even today, we kind of try and explain them the concept of online legal research. If that is done, now when we've got into e-learning, we thought e-learning was a buzzword, everyone knew about online learning and it was out there. But we are starting to now realize, when we've gone to market in January this year, that we are actually explaining the concept of e-learning to people as to how do you, utilize this platform of online e-learning to actually update yourself. So in terms of I think anything new that would be introduced will have to be, there would be a certain period of doing a concept sell. It would be at different parts of the life cycle, but that's how it is.
Got it. Makes complete sense. Let me, one last question from the list, and then let's look at I have 8 questions, which I have to cut down to from the crowd. So let me just put the one last question, Bhaven, to you. Bhaven, if you can keep to a minute on this response, will help us tremendously, and we can keep more time. As someone who's just building this right now, early stage, maybe I don't want to pin you down a super early startup, because you have already received a lot of well-deserved attention. But what are the big challenges you're facing just building something new in this space right now?
So whenever we talk about challenges, I think we like to put it in A's, B's, and C's. A's is something that you already spoke about, which is awareness and education. I think for people to understand that what are the options available to them, what are the alternatives available to them, that itself is a challenge. People even today come and ask us, what you're doing, is it even legal? Now, despite getting, a recognition from Ministry of Law and Justice, these are the sort of questions that we deal with. Priyanka rightly said that there is a concept sell. I would not like to say sell because it's a profession or a business, but yet there is a concept sell, and there is a need for awareness and education. A also stands for access to quality advice. Whenever our professional colleagues, they do advise a client, we need to understand that they need to provide a solution for the resolution of disputes. When I'm talking about dispute resolution specifically, what often happens is when the correct advice does pass on to the client remains a client forever. So I think that's another challenge that we face. B is bridging the gap between technology and law. On one hand, the law is of the 18th and 19th century. On the other hand, when it comes to people are not going to be agnostic, moving from a paper-based solution today to completely using technology, especially when human intervention is required, when human judgment is required. So there needs to be a balance. Technology needs to be a facilitator and should not take over the work of what humans do. C is culture change and the mindset change. We want people to think about whenever people have a dispute, they say, "I will see you in court." What they don't realize is while trying to teach another a lesson, they themselves get taught a lesson. So that is something that people really need to understand. And while going through all of this, we have also had our learnings. Of course, what we lack in experience, we try to bring and make up for it in enthusiasm. And our learnings have been in the form of the E's, F's, and G's. The E is, always create an ecosystem. Rahul again correctly said that we need to work together. Of course, we need the umbrella of experience. While we can provide newer ideas, we can provide energy and enthusiasm. We can go on the field and do the work. So creating that sort of an ecosystem. F is about failing forward, because with every setback that we have, it's not about then again, sort of criticizing, becoming cynical. It's about how you learn from that and move forward. So failing forward is a very important concept. And G is getting it done. Just by ideating, just by conceptualizing, it doesn't help. We need to get on the field. We know that this is a difficult thing to do. Getting people from, at least for us to move from courts to a voluntary dispute resolution, a non-adversarial mechanism. So we do understand that is a challenge, but we need to get it done. So, moving from just thoughts to actions, that is a very important thing. And I think now I can safely add the H for HumLab, because it is doing all of these things. So great work on that.
I would also add a S for what Indranil said, survive. Just as anyone who's ever built anything, S for survive. Indranil, do you agree?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
Okay, let's bring in some audience questions. We have a great gang of people who've sort of come together to ask these questions. So I'm just pulling up. So one is from Rahul Nath. Rahul is a law in a law firm, and he's just joined a law firm, and he was in a company before that, and he asks this question. He says, uh, when you look at enterprise contracts in an enterprise environment, do you feel how many years will it take for that to become fully digitized? Anyone who wants to take that on?
I mean, it's so digitized as in if the creation of the contract has to be digitized, all the parties involved in the contract have to adopt to it. The challenge that we have faced, so we have a solution which helps in creating a contract pretty much from scratch with basic inputs into a digital contract. But then oftentimes when that is being sent across to the other side, they would still want to see that in an email, be able to look at it in the standard form, make changes in the track change mode like they would historically done, and send it back like they've historically sent back a contract. Now, for all of this to happen in a digitized platform, everybody has to be willing to be on that platform, which is not always easy, especially when you're negotiating a contract. If it's about your own contracts and how to digitize them, well, if there are a whole bunch of contracts, like a lot of these banks and financial institutions have thousands and thousands of contracts, one is to just say, let's scan all of them and put it up in one place, which in itself, while it's time consuming, is not really a big challenge. But if you have to also be able to make them searchable, so have the OCR facility on them, to be able to use them in a manner where you can literally just take out extract clauses and say, this is what we did there, that will definitely take more time, because there's a tremendous amount of effort in what is the technology available. 100% it is. If an organization wants to, they can do it. It's a question is how much effort and how much time and how much money are they willing to spend on something like this.
Thank you, Indranil. I'll just move quickly to the next one. Thanks for your response there. And this is for Rahul. Rahul, we have VT who asks, are there any global innovations or tech developments that you would single out as being appropriate for use in India that you're personally excited by?
Look, I mean, I'm not going to pick up any specific innovations, largely because I think, and there have been many really interesting innovations that I've seen in my time in foreign law firms, as well as in the legal industry abroad. But I think that's the wrong approach. And I think that even if there is something that is really good and ticks almost all the boxes, I don't know if anything will tick all the boxes. And that's largely because you can't innovate at scale in the way that I guess Uber innovated, right? So Uber came up with a product. They essentially roll out the same product anywhere in the world that they go, and they don't need to really change that much for local conditions and things like that. Whereas in the legal space, you almost have to change for local conditions in every law firm that you go to, leave alone every country that you're looking to apply that product in. But look, I think we're at a really exciting time in that there is a huge need for innovation. And I think that just with the number of law firms that are using this buzzword of innovation, at least within the law firm community, people are looking to engage with it quite aggressively. So I think that we are going to hopefully through the Agami Prize itself see a lot of innovation that is built for India, built for Indian law firms, and built for the Indian business.
Thank you. I'll 2 minutes. 2 more questions. One is our dear friend Ritvik from Bahura asks, is there a policy change? Are there policy changes that you think would spur innovation in any of these areas? Maybe it's not a universal policy change, but a more specific thing. I'll put that to Either Priyanka or Bhaven, maybe one of you can answer that.
I think policy change which will bring about innovation, I doubt it. I mean, if there are certain specific things, and for that you have to move a policy, that would be more like it, because the options are so many that how do you? It's more like you need to do reverse engineering more so.
Let me ask you this, Priyanka, which is one of the things that's come up again and again. I can see a question on that as well, is advertising by lawyers. Apparently, there's this uncertainty about what constitutes legal service. And that issue is affecting certain kinds of diverse legal services from. So, anyone who wants to pick that up, Priyanka, you could pick that up, or anyone else who wants to pick that up, that question on, is that something that needs to be clarified? Does that need to be changed?
Look,
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry, no, please,
No,
sorry.
no, go ahead. I thought maybe Rahul being in the industry.
Sorry, please go ahead. Please go ahead. I'll follow up on you.
No, I was just saying that I think as a lawyer, Rahul, because he's in the industry, he would be in a better position to answer that, because we as legal service providers, we don't have any such encumbrances. So,
Rahul, quick 20-second response on that.
I mean, are you saying, do we want to advertise?
I'm saying that there's going to be a variety of different types of services that people are creating, and apparently this issue of what constitutes advertisement is starting to become something that's a bit of a sword hanging on people's necks.
I mean, look, we've existed as a firm for close to 20 years without advertising. But yeah, I mean, look, I think the point, without getting into the specificity of advertising, is that a lot of the policy that governs the legal industry is archaic. And we've got to find a way to cut through that old school way of thinking. We've had just such trouble with websites for the longest time, until the Bar Council cracked open the door a little bit and allowed websites in certain circumstances. But we've got to cut through all of that. And just one example of some policy change to answer the fixed question. We've recently seen that the Supreme Court has allowed tweeting from within the court premises, and it's made a big difference. It's so good to see these cases being reported live by a range of people. I mean, why don't we start talking about live streaming? For all the people who are in the information and the data sharing space, that's really good and useful. We've got live streaming of the proceedings in Parliament. I think it would be really interesting to see how the courts actually get to their decision, because after all, at the end of the day, all we get is a judgment. We don't see the whole process that the court goes into seeing that, and clearly there's an appetite for it as we see how much the live tweets of a lot of the Supreme Court cases have been received.
And why don't you wrap up, and then I'll ask my last question.
Yeah, because this is a problem that the policy is a problem for us as an organization. Now, we have a bunch of lawyers who work with clients and technically work with them in helping them identify what laws apply to them, what compliances apply to them. But on the other hand, we have software products which need to go through its digital marketing process, and it needs to be sold like any other product. And we have therefore had to structure ourselves as a company. But the moment we are structured as a company, we are not in a position to issue legal opinions anymore. Now, this puts us in a strange kind of a quandary for no real problem. So we have extremely trained, experienced lawyers who cannot really hold themselves out as lawyers because they're in-house counsels technically. But then our clients obviously say, then what's the value of what you're saying? Do I still need to go back to a law firm and get it validated? Because I thought I'm coming to a bunch of people who know their law. So this puts us in and we have obviously worked around this, like with everything else, people tend to work around problems. But a simple policy change might be able to solve this for a bunch of us.
I think when it comes to a quick comment, when it comes to innovation and when it comes to advertising, I think it is better to ask for forgiveness than to seek permission. If it does come to that.
Forgiveness from inside the jail might be a bit of a hard ask in this creating and entrepreneuring in the legal industry. But my last question, because it is a fantastic question, and then we'll wind up because we are beyond time, it's for you, Bhaven. And Dhanush is actually a mental health professional and tuned into this discussion and asks, is there a new category of jobs for dispute counselors that might emerge in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's not about 5 to 10 years. I think the requirement is now, because of course people don't want to hear it. They don't want to say that they're being referred to a dispute resolution profession. Mental health professional. But what is important is that they are involved in the entire dispute resolution process, especially when it comes to emotional issues. When you look for resolution of disputes and emotional issues, I think it is key that an expert in human psychology is there to assist you in going to the real issue, not just superficially dealing with the solution with the issue, because many a times when it comes to emotions, legalities, practicality, pragmatism all goes for a toss. The real issue needs to be dealt with, and until that is done, you will only be taking care of the resolution, the problem superficially, and not really resolving the real issue. So I think that the need for these professionals in dispute resolution is now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed this conversation. I'm looking forward to more of these conversations going forward. Just a kind of a little tidbit is that I'm also keen to bring together millennials, people who are in law firms, in just to see, when we bring together the people from the similar industries, do they sort of approach things differently? So there's going to be a lot of good discussions that we're going to be having in the next few months. But thank you for this wonderful conversation. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you, Indranil. Thank you, Bhaven.
Thank you.
Everyone who dialed in today. Another week to closure for the Agami Prize. So we'll plug there. But thank you all. Have a wonderful Monday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.